Knight Rider has been sponsored in part by Smooth, Satisfying Sanka brand, the first name in decaffeinated coffee.
Sunday, can Michael protect a blind witness from hired killers?
Piece of cake.
Or will KITT blow the assignment on Knight Rider?
Be there.
Production 57809, Blind Spot. This episode was originally titled Insights. It was written by Jackson Gillis and directed by Bernard L. Kowalski. This episode originally aired on NBC Sunday night at 8 p.m. on October 23, 1983. It was filmed from August 26th through September 7th, 1983. It was the 28th episode to be produced, but the 25th episode to air. This episode was filmed immediately after Goliath. The synopsis reads as follows. Michael must protect a young blind woman who accidentally stumbles into an evidence drop gone wrong. So with that, let's dig in. Once again, just like in Goliath, there is a little bit of seeing into the future at the beginning of this episode. So if you remember in Goliath, there was a scene at the start of the episode where the commandos were loading missiles on the top of Goliath, and in reality that wouldn't happen until much later in the episode. Well, this is sort of the same situation, except in reverse. So in this episode, Gaster and his crew are disposing of an informant in one of these vehicles. But if you'll note, later on in the episode, whenever KITT arrives, he's making a comment about the crusher, and we once again see this exact same scene of these same two cars being crushed. So I guess that's a situation where KITT's looking into the past as opposed to looking into the future. I always thought this was a nice touch here. Devin has a video phone on his desk, which kind of ties together how he is supposedly talking to Michael in KITT whenever Michael and KITT are out on the road. However, you never see him staring into the screen. He's always staring into a camera off somewhere else. But still, I thought that was a nice touch that they added here. This scene is, Michael and KITT are chatting. Michael says, "Oh, this is a piece of cake job compared to everything else we've done." And KITT says, "I've heard that before, like when we went up against Goliath." And this is interesting to note, mainly because it's one of the few times where Knight Rider references another episode. That doesn't happen very often. And remember, this episode was filmed immediately after Goliath, so in terms of production, Goliath and that whole thing just happened, so I guess you can understand why KITT's a little weary of piece of cake. Michael is once again pressing buttons that aren't there, and this is the backup to the hero car. Once again, we see the chrome coat hook, which is the dead giveaway. It's the only car in the series that had the chrome coat hooks, and we can see Michael's script here laying in the passenger seat. So Michael tells KITT, he starts monitoring the situation, and they're in this parking lot for the dead drop. So KITT brings up on his monitor this image where he's supposed to be watching. So in reality, this is another instance of something happening at a different time in the episode. This comes later in the episode, and you can see in the corner, this is actually the hospital where John is, which, at this point in the story, he hasn't even been shot yet. But this is actually the parking lot of the hospital. And if you watch this scene later in the episode, KITT is actually coming around this corner and driving through these cars. So it's an instance where KITT saw into the future and he's watching himself driving through the parking lot. So go figure that out. And another oddity here. So Mel and Dudley are supposed to be pulling up in the Porsche was it Dudley's Porsche, I think? And but if you watch when Michael's walking in, Louis Gassner's Cadillac is driving by right in the front, which doesn't make sense because it's not supposed to be here at the scene. But again, they're using it just as like a background car, and no one was supposed to notice that. But that's Gassner's Cadillac driving right there in front of Michael. Back up just a little bit. So this is a little out of order, but I wanted to point this out. So Michael is pulling in to the parking lot here. And if you look, Dudley's Porsche is already parked here. But then a few seconds later, we see his Porsche pull into the parking lot. So a little bit of editing issues there. And I always thought this was funny. So Michael walks into this building, and there's this young woman pushing a baby, and he just lets the door slam in her face. Look at that. So she's walking out, and he just lets the door slam in her face. He's not doesn't care about her. So I always found that humorous, that Michael should know better. Shame on you, Michael. And John pulls up with Julie and Sugar in the background, the dog. And if you look in the background, this is our first appearance of the white VW bug that kind of looks like Herbie. I don't know for a fact if this was a screen-used Herbie. Possibly not, only because we're dealing with Universal Studios here and Herbie was Disney. But that doesn't mean anything. This could have been a Herbie. I mean, we do see the stripe there, but this turns out to be kind of a running joke in the episode, and this Volkswagen is going to appear a ton, and we're going to point them all out. So there's the first appearance of the Volkswagen. And here we go. So we move forward, and KITT's here, and KITT's parked right in front of Herbie, talking to Herbie. So isn't that nice? So then we move to Mel, thinking that John dropped the evidence in KITT when he really didn't. But this is a good view of the hero car with the full button panel. So the hero car has all of its buttons now in place. The insert car does not. And something to note, when the insert car does get its buttons, they are in a different color configuration than this. But we'll go over that when we get to that point. But you can see we've got the correct tan Trans Am coat hooks back here. So this is, and obviously the dash. So this is the hero car. And we have Jack Gill doing a nice reverse 180 burnout. This is the hardtop stunt car. We can see the stock dash. We can see the round steering wheel. And note that Herbie is now nowhere to be seen. It's now some other vehicles here. But during the chase, we move forward and look what we see. Dudley's Porsche passing Herbie once again. And KITT's telling Michael that, is this your idea of a piece of cake? Note how we're at the red pursuit light. And again, that was a change that occurred during that 5-week hiatus between the first, 4 or 5 episodes that they filmed before Goliath. So during that 5-week hiatus, one of the things they did is they changed this light from white to red. I think that was a big improvement. So KITT's racing through an intersection here. We've got an appearance of our red Camaro here, which we've seen a number of times starting in season 1. There it is again. So this is when Michael has to slam on the brakes because KITT's about to hit a bus. And take a look at the front of this car. It has seen better days, that's for sure. There's a giant dent in the fender here. And look how much the bumper is just sagging down. And the headlight doors are all screwed up. The fender on this side isn't lined up. So this is one of their stunt cars. It's so hard to tell with this scene which car it is. I can't tell. It might actually be that hardtop stunt car, but I'm not 100% sure. I'm going to have to do some more digging on this. But yeah, the whole front end of this car is just looking pretty bad. So here we have Michael and KITT driving in. And this is the scene I spoke of earlier where KITT brought it up on his monitors and KITT's driving through here. But we actually do see it from that exact same angle later in the episode when it was filmed over here. And there's Herbie once again. And here we have ELYSSA DAVALOS, I don't know if that's how you pronounce it, playing Julie Robertson. To me, I always remember her from MacGyver. She had a recurring role on there as Nikki Carpenter. And here's Jack Gill in the hardtop stunt car, getting ready to do a turbo boost. He's actually not going to jump this car. This is just kind of a lead up to the jump, but that's Jack driving the hardtop stunt car. But then we switch over, and now this is the Flivver car, which we haven't seen too much of in season 2 yet, but there's the Flivver car. Flivver car, for those of you who haven't been following in season 1, is the Volkswagen-powered dune buggy jump car. And there's a nice view of it landing. You can see here, there you can clearly tell it's not a Trans Am. You can see the plexi window, you can see the bracing, the roll bars, and the wheelbase is slightly different than a Trans Am. And this is a pretty cool scene. This is Michael and KITT driving through an underpass. There's also a version of this where the semi drives under this underpass. If you watch the first few seconds of Killer KITT, we see the semi driving under this underpass as well. And for those of you who want to see what it looks like today, there we go. So this is South San Dimas Avenue in San Dimas, California. Looks pretty much the same as one would expect. And Michael driving down the road. Coincidentally, this is actually stock footage from season 1, but coincidentally there's this Volkswagen Bug, which is not the same one. Obviously, this one's blue. But this is perhaps one of the greatest shots, and you can really see the reason why they switched the front nose from having the plexiglass or acrylic turn signal blackouts to just having them molded into the bumper themselves. Look at this one. The whole front has come loose and it's standing straight up, just being held in place by the wind. That's not a headlight. That's actually the acrylic cover. And here's what I mentioned before. So this is not an identical screenshot from earlier that I showed you. This is actually in the episode later, the exact 2 same cars being crushed. And here we have Julie driving the Hero car, pulling into the park. This is a nice look at the front. We have Sugar here in the passenger seat. But if we look whenever later on in that chase, Sugar is nowhere to be found. She's not in the car at all. And now we switch to the hardtop stunt car. And we can tell that specifically because of this overhead console. At this point in the series, this is the only car that has this overhead console, is the hardtop stunt car. And we have the rubber shell on top of KITT. So I know we went over the rubber shell back in season 1, but for those of you who aren't familiar, the rubber shell is literally a rubber cast from an original Trans Am. So they took a Trans Am, they made a mold of the body, and they cast it in rubber. And then they were able to set that body on top of the existing Trans Am. Now, obviously, you can see here that the shell does not include the headlight covers or the front nose. That's why it's like this. It also doesn't include the side mirrors or the rear spoiler or the rear bumper or taillights. So it took about 4 guys, 1 on each corner, to put this shell on top of the car. We heard recently that if you watched our video on the cars getting wrecked and our call with Julius and Glima, he told us that they also had fiberglass shells, and those were taken to his yard to be disposed of as well. But this is one of the best shots you see of this rubber shell on top of KITT. And Sugar's back. And Julie, here's Julie, close up in the Hero car. Here's the white wire. Now, if you watched our previous episode, Merchants of Death, you remember how I said that this scene was actually filmed a few weeks, actually I think it was a couple months after the initial filming of Merchants of Death. Merchants of Death was one of the first episodes to be filmed for season 2, and they had to come back later and film some pickups in that episode. So whenever you see in Merchants of Death the scenes at Elmo's garage, those were actually filmed right around the time they filmed Blind Spot, believe it or not. And that's why in that episode you also see the white wire here as well. So there you go. There's your white wire. Again, won't see too much more of it, but for you fans of it, there you go. So now we move to this establishing shot of the Foundation headquarters, which is Arden Villa. If you'll remember, they only filmed at this house for 4 episodes: White Bird, Brother's Keeper, A Knight in Shining Armor, and Goliath Returns. So this is actually some stock footage that was taken during the filming of Brothers Keeper, because this is Philip Hunt's car right here, parked in the driveway from Brothers Keeper. So there you go. And the Devon's classic Mercedes was also used in that episode, so that's why these cars are here. And we have this awesome shot of Rebecca Holden, and this, of course, appears in the season 2 credits, and it originates right here. She's saying, "Oh, hi, Julie," because Julie called the foundation. So there you go. So here's what I was talking about. So remember back at the beginning of our talk, when KITT started monitoring the parking lot, he brought up this exact image on his monitor. But you can see here, this is a few frames after it cuts. That, whenever we see it earlier, we only see a few seconds of it, then it cuts. But later on in the episode, we actually see a continuation of that footage, and here you can see KITT driving through. So that's what I was talking about. So KITT was kind of watching himself in the future. So this Canyon Convalescent Hospital, as it's called in the episode, is actually the Lakeview Medical Center on Eldridge Avenue in Lakeview Terrace, California. And here it is. It's still there today. There's no good street view, and this is the scene right here where Michael and KITT and Julie's scenes were all filmed right in this parking lot right here. So it's all pretty much as it was back then. And KITT's not talking, but at this point, he brings up this image of Gassner's Cadillac on the monitor. And you know what? I just noticed something. This is, in fact, not the same Cadillac we saw at the beginning of the episode, and I'm not going to edit this out to show you that, I'm still learning stuff too with all this. So I just noticed the Cadillac we saw at the beginning of the episode had an all-white top. This one has red at the top. So it is actually a different car, and it was just totally a coincidence. So that's good to know. By the way, this wrecking yard, the Gassner's wrecking yard, if you look at it on Street View, by the way, the address right here, 555.5 Mission Road, is the actual address of the filming location. This is one of the few times they didn't change the number or anything, but that's legit right there. If you go to that location in Los Angeles, it's there's still a bunch of wrecking yards there, but I think that area's changed a little bit over the years. And we have Michael running after Alfredo Diaz. This is one of the few times in this episode we see the left-hand blind drive car. And at this point in the series, the left-hand blind drive car still has a stock dashboard. It does have a round telescoping steering wheel, so the steering wheel comes out quite a bit. It wouldn't be until season 3 that this car would actually get the dash from the current Hero car. So when they redid the Hero car for season 3, they put the old dash, because they didn't need the 2TV dash anymore. They put the old dash in this car, but as of right now, it still just has a stock Trans Am dash in it. And of course, we've got Alfredo Diaz here, played by Sam Vlahos, who we saw previously in season 1 in Hearts of Stone. So this is his second and final appearance in the series. So we have Michael running around the corner to Julie's apartment. He pulls in here. This is located at 4816 Ranchito Avenue in Los Angeles. So if we take a look at it now, so this is obviously back then. There's take a look at that wall and the stairs. So if we come to now, we can see that's all still intact. And if we rotate over here, we can see the door to Julie's apartment. And the interior scenes, these interior scenes were actually filmed on site at that apartment. So, hang out there. Maybe you can get invited into Julie's apartment. I don't know. But yeah, here we go, 4816. So let's see if we can compare that. So we've got this square door with square accent blocks on it. Let's see here. That's 4808, 4806. It must be, maybe it's down this way just a hair. It must be this last door here. I'm going the wrong way. Sorry, you're on a little road trip with me. So this right here, that's Julie's apartment right there. And you can see the door looks to be the same, except maybe they just added these windows. Let's see. Yep, They just added these windows, but the door is exactly the same otherwise. So this is Julie's apartment right here on the end. So Michael's coming to rescue Julie at the wrecking yard. And besides seeing Herbie once again, I always love this scene because KITT just takes a beating right here. There's a giant bump and he's flying over it. So he hits it heads up and then just kind of plows down into the road. So I'm sure that screwed up the underside of that Trans Am a little bit. This is the hardtop stunt car. And, KITT detects human remains. And surprisingly, there's actually some consistency here because the two cars we saw crushed at the very beginning of the episode that supposedly contained the informant are actually these two cars now crushed, the green one and the blue one. So how about that? They actually were consistent with something. So all the guys throw Michael into the passenger seat of KITT. This is the inside of the hardtop stunt car, which is somewhat rare to see. So you can see it doesn't have, the roof is just black. There's nothing in here. You can see it's got the 83 and up style seatbelt trim pieces. And we've got a nice dirty speaker cover that's held in by screws because none of the headliner's in there. And then we move forward a bit, and the shine gives you a nice look at that squared off overhead console that we saw throughout season 1 and season 2. This is probably the best view we see of the inside, and it's more than just a square box. Like, someone actually sculpted this. It's curved up and it's got some contours to it, so someone actually put some work into that console. Be neat to find one today. Yeah, there's another view of it. So you can see it's rounded at the top and just somewhat impressive. And then we come out a little bit. The sun hits, but we get a look at the round steering wheel, and we can see the 1983 shifter because, again, this is a train wreck car. So we know the train wreck cars were 1983s. So this is all very consistent with what we were expecting to see. And then the car pulls in, and this is now a different car. This is not the hardtop stunt car. And this is one of the rare times in season 2 that we see a season 1 front nose. You can see it still has its acrylic turn signal covers, which is very interesting. And then we move to this shot and of Michael actually in the trash compact, or not the trash, actually in the car compactor. And many years ago, we talked to Jack Gill about this, and he said, the only thing I remember about KITT in the Crusher is that I, as the stunt coordinator, was very worried about stopping the Crusher once it started moving with David inside the car. We wanted to see just how far we could go with David in the car, and all it would take is one small malfunction, and how do you really get him out of there? You wouldn't put a failsafe on it because any type of steel rod that we could put in there to try and stop it was just going to get crushed as well. We had to disconnect a bunch of hydraulic lines so it didn't have the kind of pressure that it would normally have. This meant that if it didn't go anywhere, this meant that if it did go haywire, it would just bend a little bit and not crush. So there you go. So I have something very interesting. I think you guys will find this interesting. Do you remember way back in our Goliath commentary, I made note of the car that was, the aftermath, the destroyed KITT that was on its side after his impact with Goliath. And I said, remember this, there's something interesting to note. So you are looking at the same car that was all wrecked up in Goliath, that was laying on its side, that was traveling through the desert. They fixed it up for this episode. Because, again, all that was just pretty much cosmetic work. But if you remember back in Goliath, not only was the hood bent, but the passenger fender was pretty much gone. The passenger door was shredded. The rear quarter was shredded. But that doesn't mean they can't reuse the car. So they cleaned it up, and they put a new door on. They put a new fender on. But take a look at this. They put a quick and dirty patch panel over the rear quarter right here to hide the damage from when it was purposely damaged to show Goliath, the impact that Goliath had. So if you look here, it almost looks like they took a piece of sheet metal, or maybe, I don't even know what this is, but some kind of a soft metal, and they just slapped it on there. You can see the seam right here, painted it black, and hope no one would notice. And if we go back a couple frames, we can see a lot of the details that we saw in that Goliath car that I pointed out, such as the rear defrost, the tinted windshield, the stock dashboard, are all intact here. This is the same car from Goliath. And then we turn here, and Michael's awake now and looking at the crusher. This is one of the few times that they used green screen in the episode. It was probably blue screen back then, I think. But they actually had KITT on a stage with a screen behind it, and they superimposed the crusher in here. They didn't use that very much, thankfully. You know, I'm always appreciative, you know, when you watch the Dukes of Hazzard, for example, and you see their driving scenes, and 99% of their driving scenes were done in a studio with a blue screen behind them. I'm so thankful that wasn't the case with Knight Rider. Knight Rider actually filmed out on the road whenever they were filming inside the car. So this is a very, very rare instance where they used blue screen. And we have the debut of the trajectory guide. Now, there's a little consistency issue here, because the trajectory guide is installed by April in the season finale Big Iron, but Big Iron was one of the first episodes for season 2 to be filmed. So KITT already has his trajectory guide feature, but in reality, Big Iron should have aired already to show him getting this installed. Trajectory guide is going to be used a few times throughout the series. The last time we see it is all the way in season 4 in Redemption of a Champion. And KITT flies out, and this is a Jack Sessoms and Slagle miniature model, and I think they did pretty well here. And then we have Michael and the Cadillac about to flip over. Note how the Gassner is apparently preparing for a flip because he has a helmet on, and KITT's got this giant dent right here in his rear quarter. And the episode ends here with Michael receiving this really, really cool sculpture from Julie of KITT. I wish I knew what happened to that. Wouldn't that be a neat piece to have? And then Julie here in asking Sugar to get in the car. So if you look in the background here, remember this was filmed after that 5-week hiatus before Goliath, so we can see that KITT has his new dashboard here. It's no longer that dash-on-dash look that I talked about just in the previous episode of Merchants of Death. So it's now the new dash, and he has his correct voice modulator now. And there's one last look at that Camaro as we leave the episode. And we have the Camaro there, but then we pull outside, and the Camaro is now parked on the road here. And we've got this food truck. Is this the same food truck from Deadly Maneuvers? We're going to have to check that out. And with that, we have opened your eyes to Blind Spot. Hope you enjoyed it. So next time, we're going to dig into Return to Cadiz, which was actually the very first episode filmed for season 2. And because of that fact, there's some really interesting details in there that I think you're going to like, including a return of Michael Chaffee's season 1 overhead console. Thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you next time.
And now, while we listen to Joe's selection of Knight Rider music that we received directly from Don Peake himself, we'd like to thank these Patreon supporters. We're featuring these fine supporters at our Knight Rider Prop Restorer level. Thank you very much for your support. And for those of you at the Knight Rider History Hunter level, we're recognizing you right now in the description. Now, if you enjoyed seeing this golden nugget of Knight Rider history being rescued from obscurity, then please consider supporting us on Patreon. Your support would empower us to bring you even more of these historical nuggets. We are the Knight Rider Historians. Till next time, take care, everybody. Bye-bye.